So I've always been paying attention every time I crank and listening carefully and noticing that it's not quite the cranking speed that I think it should be. Not knowing if there was a problem with the starter or solenoids or wiring or whatever, or the battery. So we're gonna actually dig into it today. Oh, here's my keys. Gonna get my voltmeter out. I know the voltage is dipping, but I'm gonna do some testing. It just occurred to me because I don't have a load tester. I'm gonna disconnect one battery and go to crank and see how much the voltage drops with the one battery. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other battery and see if they're performing equally. What I'd really like to do is pop the tops off and check the electrolyte level. But last night when I was looking, it was dark, I couldn't see well. It looks like these things are glued shut, so there's no checking that. Let's get started with my testing here. So this is my main starter wire battery lead. So I can disconnect this positive right here. I think I can. Like that. Okay. And let's do a brief cranking with the engine and just audibly listen. You know what? I'll get my little extension wires and hook my voltmeter up to the battery and see how much it dips the voltage when I go to crank. And then we'll do the same thing on the other battery. To rehash, I have only one of my two batteries connected right now. And lastly, I'm going to crank the engine on one battery, which is, I would say, probably not a great idea because we could be overloading that one battery. But this is the only method I have. So here we go. And this is just going to be for a moment. Key on. All right, it held the current of the glow plugs. Oops, gotta put neutral. All right, it went down to about 10 volts, which is pretty awesome. I didn't expect it to work that good. So now let's switch it to the other battery. All right, we're gonna reconnect this battery. We're gonna disconnect this battery. Normally I don't ever mess with the positives unless the negatives are disconnected. So we're gonna have to put this starter cable. This is not gonna want to cooperate. This has got to go on this stud. There we go. You know what? Let me check. Clean enough. I'm not really cranking that hard. I'm just doing this with one hand here. All right, so that's tight. And we've taken that off of this battery. Okay. Now we need to put this positive on this. And the negative hasn't popped off. The alligator clip's kind of small there. And it popped off once. So let's just double checking. All right, here we go. Now this one's reading, 12.95. Interesting. All right, here goes the crank test. It still held 10 volts. and it seemed to crank pretty normally. Huh. Maybe it's all in my head. So let me give a few cranks off this battery, since it's carrying the load well enough. It's not dropping below 10 volts. That's a good indication that the battery is good, but we need to do a few cranks to be sure. Wow, that's awesome. I was actually getting ready to go buy 2 new batteries, but I may have something else going on. I don't know. Next thing I need to do is check the starter amperage draw. I can't do that by myself here. Well, I can, but I need to rig up something. All right, that battery is doing its job. Double duty, literally. All right, I'm gonna switch back to the first battery. I only cranked it once. Let me double check it with a few more cranks. All right, I retested the right hand, or the rearmost battery here, and it's not noticeably different in cranking speed of the engine and the cranking voltage. It's still 10 and a fraction volts. I think the right hand battery is in better condition than the left hand battery, but I'm not going to condemn either one of them, so I'm not buying batteries. But what I am going to do, I'm going to take these guys out. We're going to thoroughly clean all of our connections, which they look clean enough to me right now, but I'm going to redo all that. And I'm also going to see if I can pop the top off the batteries and verify the electrolyte level. All right, so I butchered this thing up pretty good, but I was able to pop off all these caps, and they're all full enough. I'm not going to mess with the levels. I'm going to leave it just how it is. Okay, don't tell anybody I pulled the sticker off. Yeah, 950 cranking amps, cold cranking amps. I would prefer the 1100 some odd cranking amps, but hey, you know what? These batteries are performing perfectly fine. I'm not messing with them. I cleaned the terminals. I'm going to repeat and do the same thing on the other battery, and we're going to call this job done. Gosh, it's really hot and muggy today. Well, I'm calling this job done. We're fully installed. I'm gonna go and crank it here in a minute just to make sure everything is hunky-dory. Yeah, I'm a little bit troubled that one battery had a little bit lower standing voltage than the other one, which is kind of weird because, I mean, they're hooked in parallel. I don't know what's up with that, but they're both carrying the load adequately. So I've got no concerns about going on my trip. Although maybe we only got a year left on these batteries. Hopefully more than that. But I'll be able to rest a little bit more comfortably now that I've tested it.